Oh, yeah. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 40 of the Sailor Jerry podcast. My name is Matt Cawthron. I am still your host. And ladies and gentlemen, Sailor Jerry spiced rum is still made the old school way, 92 proof, bold, and smooth as hell. I just want to take a quick moment to be thankful for 40 episodes of the Sailor Jerry podcast. Pretty cool. We are officially over the hill, and it feels fucking fantastic. I hope everybody's doing good out there. If you're watching on YouTube, you will notice that I am in the back lounge of our tour bus. I am still on the road. It's been basically just over a month, but I'll be honest with you, it feels like an eternity. But the shows are going really well. It feels really great to be back on the road playing every single night. Last couple weeks, we've gone through Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Lawrence, Kansas, Dallas, Texas, a lot of different places. Did 2 Punk and Drublic festivals with No Effects and a couple other bands, and saw a lot of good friends along the way, and played a lot of really cool shows. So I'm really, really thankful. And it feels good to be podcasting here in the back lounge of the Bronx bus. So if you're listening, go check out the YouTube and see what I'm working with here. Thank you guys for 40 episodes worth of support for the Sailor Jerry podcast. You know, I'm going to keep this monologue short but sweet. We got an awesome guest and an awesome episode lined up for you. I do want to say that, you know, the Bronx is on tour with Frank Turner currently. And I talked to Frank yesterday, and we're going to get him on the podcast once we kind of settle in to the last couple of weeks of the tour, which will be in about a week. So he might be the next guest or the next guest after that. But I'm really excited to have him on the pod because he's just a super cool dude and a great musician. So I think we're going to get him to play a song as well. So anyways, nothing but love. It's time for episode 40. Dave Kruseman has got that PMA. Of course, I'm talking about that positive mental attitude. In this uplifting episode, we catch up with the former Ink Master winner to discuss his one-of-a-kind journey as a tattooer. From a wild teenage skateboarder in Oceanside, California, to risking it all by tattooing on television and opening up Olde Line Tattoo in a mall in Maryland. Dave's positive outlook and love for traditional tattooing is truly inspiring, and this was one of the coolest interviews that I've ever done. I've been looking forward to talking to Dave for a long time now. I've heard a lot of great things about him, and it was just a really cool, casual, fun conversation, but also really insightful, and he's just got a lot of cool shit to say, you know. So do yourself a favor, sit back, relax, pour yourself some Sailor Jerry, and let's go.
Yeah. What's going on? Where are you at? You look like you're in heaven over there with like a nice glow behind you or something.
No, well, dude, no. It's all smoke and mirrors, as they like to say in the in the magician's world. But this is I'm in Richmond, Virginia right now on tour. So
An amazing place.
yeah, Richmond's cool as fuck. This is my hotel room, and I just blurted out because there's like you could see a bunch of weird cables and shit back there, you know.
Oh, Brian Bruno from Absolute Art in Richmond.
You know, it's funny. I just sent him an email because I'm trying to get tattooed tomorrow. So I don't know him personally, but I just messaged him. So I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah. He's a great tattooer. He did a large portion of my back that was previously started by somebody else. And then he was kind enough to finish it for me. So through that, I kind of got to know him. He's a super good guy.
Awesome, man. So where are you at right now?
So I'm at my house in Carlsbad, California. So I do, I'm bi-monthly. So ever since COVID, so we had a tattoo shop here on the West Coast and one on the East Coast. But during COVID, we shut the West Coast shop down because we just couldn't survive, basically. we decided to keep the East Coast shop going. And now I'll tattoo for 30 days straight on the East Coast. And then I come here for a month and vacation. And it gives me a chance to hang out with my kids and do things that I love. And it's really the best schedule. You know, I wish I would have thought about it 30 years ago when I started this game, you know?
Yeah, man. I mean, of course. I mean, if you can be bi-coastal, it really is the best of both worlds. And are you from the West Coast?
Yeah, I'm from Oceanside, California, which is San Diego County. And about 12 years ago, we moved to Hagerstown, Maryland to open our studio there. And it's been going off ever since. I mean, it's a good tattoo shop. So we're super stoked to work there.
Awesome. And that's Olde Line, right?
Yep. Inside of a mall, believe it or not, next to Dick's Sporting Goods.
You know, well, that kind of leads into one of the questions I was going to ask you, because I don't know if for people who haven't been to Maryland just kind of gets down like that. So what prompted to choose Hagerstown in Maryland?
You know, years ago, I did a little bit with a guy that owned East Coast Inc. magazine. His name's David Melvin. He's recently passed away in the last couple of years. Rest in peace. He's an amazing guy. Well, he started a magazine called East Coast Inc. And he had asked me and my wife, Kim, to do some interviews for people through the magazine because he was having problems getting tattooers to commit to doing interviews with him. And I said, well, the reason why they won't commit is because you're not a tattooer. And you know how tattoo artists are. They're real finicky when it comes to stuff like that. They only want to talk to people that they get along with or whatever. So I told him, I said, well, I'd be willing to help you. So I did an interview with Brian Bruno. I did one with Chris Stewart from Made to Last Tattoo in Charlotte, North Carolina. I got a handful of people in there that were great tattooers, and I feel like it helped propel the magazine forward some. And during that time, he told me that he was going to open a tattoo shop inside of a major mall. And I kind of smirked about it and was like, dude, you're crazy, man. He knows if you go to the mall and you get a haircut, you could leave with lice or whatever. Like, it's just a fucking sketchy environment. Well, we go there to do a guest spot, and his tattoo shop was amazing. And to be honest with you, most amazing part about it was that it was in a mall, because if you had 20 minutes before your next appointment, you could walk down to Chick-fil-A and get a sandwich or a smoothie or whatever else you wanted to do. Not to mention, there was a different crowd of people showing up to his tattoo shop. It was more upper middle class people. You know, I've been tattooing now for 26 years. And when I started tattooing, it was a lot of gangbangers, a lot of bikers, drunk college students, military guys, military women, stuff like that. And then slowly it started changing into like, now the firefighter wants to get a tattoo. Oh, I just tattooed a school teacher, you know? So to be in a mall now, it's like grandmas, grandpas, moms, dads, you know, they want to bring their kids in when their kids turn 18, because every kid begs their parents for a tattoo when they're 18. And I think that it's a safer environment, they think, you know, because it's in a mall, you've got security. It's not on the seedy end of town where there's a bunch of Harleys parked out front and some guy named Snake's running the place. So it's just a different gig, you know? And for me and my wife, it's worked out really well. So she runs the whole ship. I just tattoo, hang out with the guys and the girls. They do tattoos, and she basically handles everybody's books, all their appointments, all the emails and everything else. So it's really nice to be able to sit back and just kind of focus on what I do and have her. She has my back for that, you know?
Oh, that's super cool, man. Yeah. And I totally understand the mall aspect, you know, because I mean, this is not anything really close, but I used to work at a mall when I was younger. I used to work at the food court. And I get the mall vibe, you know, the mall vibe is just, it's different, but it's actually kind of really cool because it is like this little community inside, and you do get people from all walks of life, you know?
100%. And when you take a 20-minute break during your tattoo, you can go get free Chinese food samples. And, you know, if I take myself back 20 years, I would have never guessed that I would have been in a mall tattooing, you know, but I look back to like the history of tattooing and Burt Grimm and all that stuff that, you know, they were in the outdoor mall of their time. So, you know, a lot of younger tattooers will give us flack for being in a mall, but the reality is it's not the location of where you are. It's the quality of the product that comes out of the building. and the hospitality, you know? So in my opinion, if you're great to your clients and you treat your clients like family and your crew like family, it doesn't matter where you're located, as long as you're giving them a great product, you know, which is what Sailor Jerry did his whole career. So I think that that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And you talk about, you know, taking a look back a little bit. And I do want to do that for our fans that, you know, and listeners that might not necessarily be super familiar with your story. Let's kind of go back a little bit and get into the origin story. You mentioned you're from Oceanside.
Yeah.
You know, what was your childhood like?
So, you know, I grew up in Oceanside, California in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't the safest place in the world, you know, it was a little gangster. But if you knew where you should be and where you shouldn't be, it could be safe, you know. But if you wanted to get into trouble, there was trouble to be had. You know, I was raised by my mom, who's a full-blown hippie. So I was never raised to like hate anybody for their gender or their sexual preference or their race or anything like that. So I think that I had an easier upbringing in Oceanside because I got along with everybody. You know, everybody was family to me. I didn't care if you were black, white, Hispanic, Asian, gay, straight, whatever the other 10 words for it these days are. Like, it's all good to me, man. I actually got the word human tattooed on my neck because I believe that we're all just humans. You know, I don't think that race or color or sexual orientation should play a part in anything other than the fact that if you're a nice person, then you're a good person, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And what were you like? What were you like in high school? What kind of, did you get into any trouble, or what were you, a punk rocker? What were you doing in high school?
You know, I got into a little trouble, but nothing major. So, I got in trouble for robbing a skateboard company when I was in the 10th grade. I don't remember what it was. I think it was like Memorial Day weekend or something. It was Tracker skateboard trucks. If you know about skateboarding, me and my buddy Albert Corona were riding down. They had these ramps that they would keep behind the shop, so we would go back there and like use their launch ramps or whatever. Well, he looks at me and goes, "Hey, dude, they left the door open." And I was like, "Really? That's crazy." So, you know, being 15, 16 years old, a skateboard company left their door open. There's nobody there. Like, what are you going to do? You know? So we went back to his house, got his brother's little Red Ryder wagon and started making loads of stuff and loaded up our bedrooms with all kinds of skateboard wheels, decks, trucks, everything. So for like 2 weeks in high school, we were peddling this stuff out of our lockers in high school and making thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, I get a note from the security guard that says, "Hey, the principal wants to see you. I got to walk you to the principal's office." So I was like, all right. And I had no idea what it was for. Because there was fights at Oceanside High School all the time. I figured they just wanted me in there for some reason or another. Well, I go into the principal's office and there's dozens and dozens of Tracker merchandise, like skateboard decks, hats. Ooh. And I immediately knew, like, oh shit, we're in trouble, you know. And of course, this is pre-internet, so you couldn't tweet about it. There was no posts on Instagram. It was just all word of mouth. So he says, "Do you know anything about all this stuff?" And I just fucking confessed, man. I was like, "Yeah, they left the door open and we took a bunch of stuff." But I wouldn't roll over on the other guy, you know? So I basically took the rap for it and had to do a bunch of community service that summer. And I had to spray paint over a bunch of graffitied walls and wash school buses and stuff like that. So I learned my lesson early on that stealing stuff is not a good idea, you know?
Yeah, man, that's a good one though. And honestly, you're right. At that age, what are you going to do when a skateboard factory is just leaving the back door open like that? I mean, that's
comparable to a 9-year-old kid in the candy store. Everybody's gone out of the candy store. Of course, they're going to go in there and take the fucking Jelly Bellies, you know?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So when did tattoos, tattoo culture, tattooing, when did that kind of like make an impression on your dome? You know what I mean? Like how old were you when you kind of first got into it?
For my high school graduation, my older brother had given me a gift certificate to a place called San Diego Tattoo Land, which was a local tattoo shop back in the day. I have no idea if it still exists or not, but I had this gift certificate in my wallet for probably most of the summer after I graduated from being a senior. And then one of my friends, we were skateboarding by, like, "Hey man, there's San Diego Tattoo Land. You have a gift certificate to that place, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You should go in and get a tattoo. I really want to watch you get a tattoo." And I didn't want to do it, to be honest with you. I was fucking terrified because it's all bikers and everything else. I'm like a little skinny skateboarder kid. I was like, I don't know. Well, I walk in there and I got a tattoo. And I knew when I stood up and looked in the mirror after I got that tattoo that I wanted another one. And it wasn't 2 years after that I linked up with a professional skateboarder named Chris Markovich. And we started going every weekend to get tattoos together. And we covered probably half our bodies before we were 21, you know? So we were tattoo junkies at a young age. The sad part about that is living here in San Diego, we were so close to like Bob Roberts and Ed Hardy and all these Jack Rudy, all these great tattooers that we didn't even know about because Instagram didn't exist. All we had was our local phone book with the yellow pages. So we had 3 different options in San Diego County. We didn't know that if we drove an hour and 20 minutes to LA, we could get tattooed by one of the best guys in the world. If I did know that, I'd have a lot better tattoos than I do today. You know what I mean?
For sure. What was the first tattoo?
My first tattoo was designed by a guy named Leo Zuleta, and it was a tribal sunshine on my bicep, and which is now, well, years ago, it got turned into a bong monster. So now it's got little pipes coming out of it and smoke and red shocked eyes and everything. It's silly. I got a bunch of crazy tattoos. I would feel at this point, I'm probably 75 or 80% covered. If you look at my arms, like all this stuff is all, I'm getting tattoos over the top of my old faded tattoos because I'm out of space. And that just seems like the right thing to do. I don't think that I'm going to be done getting tattooed until I like physically can't heal them, you know?
Yeah. How do you feel about like the blackout shit, like the full black arm shit? You ever think about going that direction?
No, I don't think I could see myself ever doing that. But I also never got any like crazy tattoos that I regret super hard. You know, I never got anything racist tattooed or any ex-girlfriend's names or anything like that, you know? I think it's cool that people are doing that, you know, but for me, I don't want to take on that project. I don't want to tattoo you if you're unless the person's like super talkative and like hyped up, then maybe, I don't know, but I just don't see any excitement about it. I get it why people do it, you know, because they make a bunch of dumb decisions and now their option is put a big black sock over it. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. When did your kind of obsession with getting tattoos turn into a curiosity to start giving them?
You know, I got tattooed my first tattoo was done when I was 18. I was full-time tattooing by the time I was 21 years old.
Damn.
Yeah, I did. I moved back to North Carolina because that's where my parents had moved, and I couldn't afford to stay in California on my own at the time. I went back there, and my older brother made me a homemade tattoo machine out of a Radio Shack motor, a Walkman motor, and a AC adapter from Radio Shack, and an E string off of a guitar that we had sharpened on a sharpening stone, and we just used India ink, and we would sit there and doodle around on each other. Well, after about doing that for like 3 or 4 months, a couple of the older guys from his job were like, "Hey man, I want to get a tattoo." So then now here I'm doing these like big pieces like this big with a single needle that are taking me like 6, 7, 8 hours to do a tattoo that would probably take 45 minutes today. But they were coming out decent. And, you know, a guy by the name of James Vaughn, who is an amazing Japanese tattooer from North Carolina, saw some of the tattoos that I did and offered me an apprenticeship. And at the time, to make a living, I was hanging sheetrock and I wasn't making that much money. I was kind of like the low man on the totem pole on the construction company. So he basically was like, "Hey, if you come here and I show you how to do this properly, you can take home like a couple $100 a day." So I was 21 years old, making $300, $400, $500 a day, which is not a good thing for a 21-year-old. Strip clubs, at the bars. Now being a responsible adult, I look back on it and I don't really have any regrets. I wish I would have been more financially responsible back then, you know? And that's something I think the younger generation, they have to learn that for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I think it's very rare at that age to have the wisdom to to not put yourself through it and to listen to everyone who's telling you, "Hey, we've all been through this. This is how it's going to go. Don't do it." Like when you're that young, it's like almost impossible to do that.
Totally. You got to just kind of roll with it and learn from your mistakes, you know, and that's kind of the same, you know, growing up here in Oceanside, California is the same thing. You get your ass kicked one time, then you know better than to mouth off. You know, or same in a tattoo shop, you know, mess somebody up one time. That'll be the last time you mess somebody up if they beat your ass, you know. I remember my couple years like tattooing professionally, you would have like this crazy like big burly lumberjack dude come in, and like tattoos on the boobs were popular back then. So he'd be like, "Hey man, my old lady wants to get this fairy tattooed on her boob." And you're like terrified as a 21-year-old kid to touch this monster's wife's boob. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I don't know how I can do that. And my mentor was really cool. He was just got to grab it and stab it. I was like, all right, dude, I guess that's the answer. So it took me probably about 3 or 4 years to be comfortable with tattooing anybody in any area. But now after doing it for 26 years, it's kind of like second nature. You don't forget how to do it. You know, even doing it every other month, when I get back, like the first tattoo, I'm a little rusty for the first 10 or 15 minutes, but boom, it's just like getting right back on that bicycle and going for it. Except for I think that you get better because now you haven't done it for a month. So you're hyped up to like do something cool for somebody, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you how long it kind of felt you to get like comfortable and confident in your tattooing. You're saying about 3-4 years?
Yeah, I would say 3 or 4 years for that. To get confident in my style of tattooing, 15 years easily, you know? Because the thing is like, I came into tattooing during a time where a lot of different styles were coming into play. So I learned traditional tattoos. Then new school tattooing was really popular. So I took a couple years off of doing traditional and I tried to go down that new school route. It definitely wasn't for me. It wasn't my style. So I found myself doing like a crossbreed of traditional tattoos and new school tattoos, which was totally ridiculous looking. I've got some pretty cool photos to go through that are pretty bad. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to stick to my roots and stick to what I know, because the more I started looking at like old Sailor Jerry Flash and a handful of people that I had seen over the years that had old tattoos by people like Sailor Jerry and stuff like that, you could still read them. And these were guys that were like 80 and 90 years old. So getting tattooed myself and wearing tattoos for 10, 15, 20 years, you start to see where the people that tattooed you could have made a better decision, you know? In my opinion, black lines belong in tattoos. You know, the color realism stuff is amazing. It's very, very impressive. I can't do it myself. And kudos to the people that do. But the reality is it's not going to hold up in the skin over a 30-year period of time. It just won't, unless there's enough black in there to sustain it. You know, to me, the black is kind of like the primer for a tattoo. You know, you got to have the black in there because all the other colors are going to fade, but the black is, if worst case scenario, it'll turn blue over the years, you know?
Yeah, man, I definitely agree with that. Absolutely, you know, and it's cool. I would love to see those traditional new school mashups, those fusions.
What I used to do is like, so I still to this day don't use an iPad for my tattoos. Everything I do is hand drawn with pencil and paper. I'm the only one left in my whole tattoo shop that does it the traditional way, which is kind of cool because now I have these younger kids coming into me and they're like, "Hey man, do you do those old school tattoos?" And I'm like, okay, first of all, I feel super old right now that you said that. But yeah, I used to take Old English letters, like a straight thing of Old English letters, and I'd put it down on a copy machine and I'd put a white sheet over my hands and I would turn my hands like this and it would print it in an arc. And that's how we did like stomach rockers back in the day to make them bend. And a lot of times if I did new school tattoos, I would draw up a pair of hair clippers or whatever, and then I'd put it on the copy machine and move it while it was copying so it kind of looked melted or whatever. Like, we experimented so much with tattoos when I was coming up, which is part of the fun of it. You know, now the kids that come into the game today, they've got all this technology at their hand. So they can do biomechanical tattoos, they can do color realism tattoos, tribal tattoos, Japanese tattoos, traditional tattoos, neo-traditional tattoos, whatever you want. There's a market for it, you know? I mean, we've got guys at our studio that do nothing but like super fine line black and gray. And then we've got guys that do traditional tattooing, Japanese tattooing. It's cool to see like the different styles and see what people are interested in, you know? But for me, I'm going to do traditional tattoos until my time has come. I just love them.
Yeah, I talked to Paul Dobleman about the iPad thing, and he was just like, man, he's like, of course, you know, it's no hate, do what you're going to do, but for me and the tradition of tattooing, there's nothing better than just seeing an artist just sit down and slap out a drawing and just kick ass with it, you know? So it's two different schools, but I side with you for sure.
It is, you're right. And I respect both of them. But for me, if I sit down and I sketch something out with a red pencil and then I do my final drawing with my black pen, it's not perfect. And to me, that's what a cool tattoo is. It still has soul. It still has character. It looks like a handcrafted piece of folk art. If you do that same tattoo on an iPad, every leaf is the same. Every line is perfect. To me, it doesn't look like a tattoo. It looks like an iPad tattoo. Now, there are people that can use iPads and do it good enough and hide it to where it doesn't look like it was done on an iPad. But 90% of the time, you can tell if it was done with technology. To me, I like picking up that tattoo machine, and I love the fact that one line might go past the leaf, or there's an extra eyelash on the lady, because it was just a piece of art that you shared with that person at that time. And this is what came out of it, you know? And to me, that looks so much cooler. It looks so much tougher. It has so much more love and life to it that that's what I'm into, is the traditional style of tattooing. And bringing up Paul Dobleman, hands down, he is one of my favorite tattooers in the world. He's such a good dude. So when I had my tattoo shop on the West Coast, I was designing a back piece for this guy. And I had a couple books laid out that I was getting reference from or whatever. Well, my wife comes back into the back room. She goes, "Hey, there's somebody here to see you." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." And fucking Paul Dobleman walks around the corner. I'm like, "Oh shit, dude. What's up, dude? How's it going?" And I had all his books, like the Spider Murphy books and all the Paul Dobleman books. And he looked down, and I was like beat red because I was so embarrassed that I was using his reference. And he looked at me and said, "Hey, everybody uses reference." And it made me feel so much better, because that's the truth. You know, tattooing to me, I mean, look at how many Sailor Jerry tattoos still happen to this day, but it's a refined version of it. You know, traditional tattooing is a bunch of recycled imagery, you know, and a lot of these color realism people, they'll dog on it because it's recycled imagery. But what are they doing? They're taking a still from a movie and doing it. They're doing the same thing. It's just a picture of Frankenstein or a picture of Elvira or some superhero sleeve or whatever. So it's the same fucking thing. It's just gone about a different way, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I agree with you, man. What, you mentioned your brother a couple times about he had the gift certificate for the tattoo, and then he kind of helped you put that first machine together. How was that relationship? How important was that?
My brother passed away about 27 years ago from brain cancer. He had a brain tumor, and he passed away. One of the coolest things that came out of that is before he got sick and died, he sat me down. He said, "Hey, man, you know what would be cool?" And you got to think, like, my brother was like a super heavy metal, like death metal type dude. Like, he was a Hessian guy for sure. So I had no idea what was about to come out of his mouth. He says, "When I pass away, I want to be cremated, and you should take my ashes and get tattooed with them. That way I can go everywhere you go." And I was like, kind of thrown back by that. I was like, "Dude, I don't know, man. That sounds kind of morbid and kind of sick." But the tattoos in the tops of my hands right here, all the black ink in them is done with his ashes. And my buddy Chris Wynn did it, 20 something years ago. And those are some of my favorite tattoos, because every time I look down at them, I do think about my brother, you know, and it's so cool. Since then, a lot of people have come to me to try to get that style of tattooing from me, and I'll do it. You know, I think it makes for a sacred tattoo, you know, whether it's your mom, your dad, your brother, or your sister, or your ex-husband or wife or whatever, like, to be able to keep them with you forever is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's, I also think that it's super cool that, your brother had such an important role in setting you on your path,
He built that tattoo machine and was like, "Hey, I think I tattooed some crazy pot leaf on his arm or something my mom would have not approved of, you know." Now, here we are 30 years later. My mom loves tattoos. She digs that I'm a tattoo artist. So it's come full circle. But I think when I first got involved in it, my parents were probably a little concerned, you know, as any parent would be if their kid is getting into something that, like, is a known biker type thing, you know. I think my parents were concerned, like, next thing you know, I'm going to be riding on Harleys with all my friends. And I never did. You know, I was always a skateboard rat. I was always into, like, West Coast punk rock music. Nowadays, I'm into Fleetwood Mac. My wife got me into Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks, stuff like that. I like the oldies now. I like all kinds of music now. I go to Stagecoach every year because I love country music. If you put some old West Coast punk rock on now, like, I'm familiar with it and I like it, but I don't vibe with it today. I feel like I'm an old guy now. I'm going to be 50 this year, you know? So driving down the road, listening to Bad Religion, it's just not me anymore, you know?
Yeah, a lot of those 90s punk rock bands, they don't quite hit as good as they used to, but Bad Religion's still good. That's fucking amazing. You're going to Stagecoach every year. That's a wild ride.
Yeah. I told my wife, this will be our third year coming up next year. I told her, I said, the only thing I'm missing is a cowboy hat. I got to get a cowboy hat.
And it's funny too. You're talking about your parents kind of like, tripping a little bit, you getting into the tattoo scene. I remember, dude, I have a distinct memory of being in high school. And when my mom, she took me to go get my first pair of Dickies, and she started like crying because she thought I was joining the gang.
Yeah. And you're going to be in a gang now that you have the Dickies and the white socks pulled up high, the whole 9 yards. I know, the same thing for me. You know, the funny thing is when I first moved from California to North Carolina, this redneck dude came up to me and he's like, "Hey man, you dress like you're a Hispanic." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I never even thought of it because that was normal in California to wear Dickies with high socks pulled up. That every kid in Southern California dressed like that. So to me, that was totally normal. Now that I'm older, I get what he was saying. It's a West Coast thing for sure, you know?
Absolutely, man. So how long were you tattooing before Ink Master?
So I was tattooing. So that was 6 years ago. So I was tattooing for a solid 20 years before I went on the show.
How did it happen? How did it come together?
You know, I got a call from Mike Chambers, who is a very well-known traditional tattooer in the tattoo industry. And he asked me if I had ever seen the show. And I was like, yeah. I was like, me and my wife and my kids actually watch it every Tuesday. It's like Tattoos Day, you know? He goes, well, I'm sitting here with one of the producers for the show, and they're looking for a well-rounded tattooer that focuses on traditional tattooing. Is this something that you would be interested in? And to be honest with you, I thought he was joking with me. So I was like, dude, I don't know, man. You know, the tattoo industry kind of looks at that show like it's kind of whack, you know? And I kind of did at that time too, but I was interested in it because it was tattooing. The thing that I wasn't interested in is all the drama. But then after talking to my family, they were like, hey, you're being invited to go on something that the whole world is going to see. If you don't take this opportunity, you're going to regret it later. And the more I thought about it, and the more I talked to some very well-respected tattooers in the community, they said the same thing. They were like, if anybody's going to go do this show, you should go do it. You have the face for it. Long story short, I agree to it. Next thing you know, I fly to New York City. I'm fucking thrown into a middle of a tornado of drama and trying to tattoo at the same time. Outside of the fact that I've been doing traditional tattoos for a solid 10 years, nothing outside of that. And now I've got to do all these different types of tattoos that I know nothing about. So I'm literally winging it, everyone, trying to figure out how to do it as I go. And lo and behold, I end up winning the thing. I never went there expecting to win it. It's just something that happened. And I'm very thankful for it to this day. You know, to this day, people come from all over the world to get tattooed by me. And I think it's a blessing. I really appreciate what they did for me. You know, there are some issues that I have with the show that I would change if I was a producer, but I don't really know much about reality TV. So I don't know what the general public is looking for. But I do think that they could do it with a little less drama. And I absolutely think that there are higher caliber tattooers out there that they should have on the show, you know?
Yeah, I think so too. I was going to ask you, like, when you watched the finished product that we all saw on TV, like, how accurate of a portrayal was it for when it was actually happening?
Man, I would say pretty accurate. I always tell people this: if you look like a jerk on TV, then you're a jerk, you know, because it's in your power to act the way you want. You know, there's cameras on you. So for me, before I even went, me and my wife sat down and she was like, hey, one thing that's really important to me is please just portray yourself as you are, so our kids don't think that you're some asshole on TV or whatever. And we had a huge business at the time. So the last thing I wanted to do is like sabotage my business by going on there and trying to play cutthroat. So I just tried my best to do good tattoos every time. I respected the judges, which I think a lot of the people that go on there don't. They think that those judges are out to get them, but they're just doing their job. You know, their job is to blow your tattoo up on a big screen and tear it apart. And if you can't take that, then it's going to be a rough ride, you know. But I had been getting critiqued my whole career from all my mentors and people that I worked for. So I think that I already had I was already set up for success on that show. I immediately got along with everybody there. It was a crazy journey, man. I still think about it to this day. I mean, it's been 6 years now, and still to this day, if I go to a grocery store or a gas station or airport, people stop me and they're like, "Hey man, you're the guy on Netflix, huh? From the TV show." I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." It's a trip.
Yeah, it's cool, but everything you're saying about it is super real. But going just back to the beginning of it, of being, you're already an established tattoo artist, so there is that ideology of, if I go on this show, is it really going to be that good? Is it going to be bad? Is it going to be a thing that hurts my credibility or whatever? I think you absolutely made the right decision. At the end of the day, if you hadn't done it, I think you would have regretted it. Absolutely. And I love that the fact that you were able to go on the show, be yourself, and win, which is amazing.
The funny thing is like you saying all that stuff is absolutely what I was worried about going on the show. But what I didn't take into account was none of that stuff mattered. What happened to me, the biggest downfall to it was social media. So what happens in a situation like that is everybody that sits at home in their living room and watches that TV show, they have their particular fan. And if it's not you and you're the one that won, then you were going to get verbally bashed to no end on the internet. I mean, dude, people were saying things about my wife, my son, my daughter. I mean, it was horrible. I probably spent 6 months just blocking people. So many people, like dozens and dozens of people. It'd be like Joe Schmo from fucking Idaho that's like, "Hey man, nice picture of you and your daughter. Like, she sure does look slutty," or something like that. And I'm like blown away by the fact that like a human being can say that to a stranger, or, "Hey, you definitely didn't deserve to win. You're the worst tattooer in the world. You can't even do a portrait. Like, how could you win Ink Master if you can't do a portrait?" But the thing is what these people don't take into consideration is maybe the person that can do a portrait can't do a traditional tattoo. Nobody excels at everything on that show. Everybody has humps and bumps to work through. And it's like the Super Bowl. You might have a team that kills it all the way through the whole Super Bowl. And then the last game, man, they fumble and they lost. And for me, it was my shining moment. And I got to take the win that day. And I don't have any regrets. I don't feel bad about it. I look at the 3 tattoos at the end and I feel like I deserved it. And I'm not boosting my ego or anything, but if you take the 3 final tattoos and you fast forward 45 years from now, mine's going to be super readable. That ship is still going to be sailing through that ocean with the seahorses, and the eagle's still going to be perched on top. The color realism tattoo that Chris Blinson did was phenomenal. I will never take that away from that guy. It was a great tattoo. But readability, there was so much red involved in that thing. And it was, you're just duplicating a picture of a woman and putting a tattoo and putting her in a desert scene. Like, mine was a hand drawn tattoo. I mean, that thing took me 40 plus hours to draw it and get it right. I worked hard on that thing, and I'm glad that I was able to show the whole world, not just the United States, the whole world, what a really cool built to last tattoo is, and that's the thing that's the joy that I get out of it now, is like, I'll have people from France, from Colombia, from Italy, Canada, all over the world, younger tattooers will DM me and ask for advice and stuff like that. And for me, like, I think that's cool, man, so it's almost like it put me into this like father figure of tattooing for the younger generation. And for somebody to be in this situation that could potentially have a tattitude and not answer those people could be devastating for tattooing. So for me, I feel it's imperative to get back to these kids and treat everybody with respect, no matter how good they are at tattooing. We all sucked at one time, so if you suck at tattooing and you're trying to get better, that's what it's all about. It's a lifelong journey. We're never going to figure it out. Even if we tattoo for 50 years in good health, we're still going to be learning at that 50-year mark,
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I think that's so cool that you have taken on that role to just be cool to anyone who's got questions or curiosities about, about learning to tattoo the right way, or just about the show in general, reaching out to you. And it is really cool. You mentioned one thing you don't really think about sometimes is, it's a global show. It really is worldwide, so I don't know if do you do a lot of like international conventions and stuff like that?
I never have. I've done the farthest I've gone to do a convention is Canada. And that was because after the show, all these emails started coming in where people were paying me to go places. So I was like, well, of course I'm going to do that, you know? And they would like buy plane tickets for me and my whole family. And it was just amazing, you know? But now there's a handful of them in the United States that I really, really think are great conventions. Elm Fest in Dallas, which is very, very small. Large group of friends get together and do it. It's one of my favorite ones in the world. And then I also do Pagoda City Tattoo Fest, which is put on by Joe Johns and Justin Weatherholtz, which in my opinion is one of the best conventions in the country. They just started a new one in Sacramento that looks to be probably the best one. I didn't go this year. I didn't get invited, but I would totally do it. I'll probably do a handful of them throughout the year. But overall, I like tattooing in my little studio at home in Maryland. And, you know, you got your comfortable chair, you know where all your stuff is in your drawer. And you're literally tattooing out of your backpack. So it's kind of a pain in the butt. And at 50 years old, this is what's required. You know, you get to a convention and they got some fold up plastic chair. That's not going to vibe with me at 50, dude. I got fucking back problems. I got to have something comfortable. So I'm going straight to Office Max. I'm going to buy a $200 chair that I got to throw away on Sunday or give to somebody just so I can be comfortable. You got to pay for your plane tickets. You got to pay for the booth. So in the end, financially, it's really not even worth it. On top of the fact, you're stuck in a building tattooing when you could be exploring that town. So if I was going to fly over to London and do a tattoo convention, I'd much rather fly over to London and go sightseeing with my wife and my kids. You know, I don't want to be under a roof doing my job, you know?
Good point. Do you still have the Dodge Challenger from Ink Master?
I never kept it. Me and my wife traded it in for a Chevy Suburban, which I do still have and I love. I just now hit 100,000 miles on that thing.
Hell yeah, man. Did you ever make anyone call you Ink Master?
No, I don't, you know, I don't even put it on my social media, you know? So every single person that I know that has been on that show, I don't want to say brag because that's not the word, but they really put it out there like, hey, I was on the show, Ink Master, Ink Master, Ink Master. And for me, like, that doesn't define me as a tattoo artist. You know, that was my 5 minutes in the sun. I got really lucky. I won that thing and that's cool. And that's good for me. Like, I don't need to like ride that train. You know, if anybody is a hardcore watcher of that show, they'll figure it out.
Awesome, man. Let's talk about PMA for a second. Cause you got the hat on. For those who don't know, Positive Mental Attitude from the Bad Brains song, Attitude. So, you know, obviously PMA is just about, you know, trying to stay positive in a world that isn't necessarily always lollipops and daisies, but how has maintaining a positive attitude in life benefited you and your relationships in general?
You know, the PMA thing for me, it's funny that you mentioned that because a lot of people are like, oh my God, man, Kruseman, he's so positive. He's so positive. And I'm so far from being a positive person. To me, the PMA is a reminder when I wake up how my day can be, you know, because I suffer from depression just as much as the next guy or the next lady. I've got family issues just as much as the next guy or the next lady. You know, like, I feel like people, you know, they see you on social media and they're like, oh, this guy's got 100,000 followers. He won this TV show. He lives on 2 coasts. He's got a tattoo shop. He's rich, all this great stuff. None of that stuff's even true. You know what I mean? I'm the same as the guy that lives next door to me. For me, the PMA, like, it's a constant reminder for me and it helps me stay positive. You know, I've gone through therapy. I've seen a psychiatrist just like anybody else. PMA to me is the way that I like to live my life. I would rather have a positive mental attitude than a negative attitude or a FTW attitude, which is what I had when I was younger, you know. I feel like at my age, you got to keep it positive in a world gone mad. I mean, the world's crazy right now, you know, and not so much crazy as in, like, you know, there's always war, there's bullying, there's all this stuff going on, which I believe has happened our whole life. Like, all along it's been happening. But what's changed is we have these phones in our hands where you see everything negative. You know, you can scroll through your Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and there's a dog getting beaten. There's an old lady getting beaten at an old folks home. Some kids bullied some guy with Down syndrome. There was a crazy car accident with all these fatalities. this country's going to war against this country. This president's a jerk. This president's not, blah, 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 blah. It's so much fucking overload of feed that it's very easy to become a negative person getting sucked into that. So one thing that I've found that's helped me is I set my phone down. You know, I look at it a few minutes a day. If I'm going to post something that day, I'll go back in a couple hours later, see who's said what, try to respond. But for the most part, I try to put my phone down and go on a bike ride to the beach or go snowboarding or draw tattoos or paint. And really, to be honest with you, keep my head down and fucking keep the course, man. Keep hustling, you know, stay the course. And to be able to stay positive during that is not always the easiest thing, but I have figured it out, I think, for the most part, and I'm super stoked on it. I think I'm always going to rep the PMA. I think it's a great thing. I think everybody needs to have a little positive mental attitude in their life. There's so many people that are struggling with mental illness and mental health. And, you know, we're not really set up as a society to take care of them. And I think that that's sad. You know, I mean, like, look at the homeless population. When I was a kid growing up in Oceanside, there was a guy named Can Man Willie and like 3 other guys that were homeless. Now, when I go down to Oceanside, there's hundreds, dude. Yeah. Go downtown Diego, thousands. Downtown Baltimore, thousands. I mean, they're everywhere, you know? And it's like, you wonder what the hell's going on? You know, you could easily get sucked into becoming a conspiracy theorist and be like, oh, it's this and it's that. But like, who knows really what it is, you know? For me, I'm keeping my course. I'm going to keep it positive. I'm going to work as hard as I can to try to give my kids and my family the best life that I can. I'm going to be there for my crew that's there for me when I'm gone at Olde Line Tattoo. I mean, all those guys and girls there bend over backwards for me and my family. And we try to do the same for them, you know, because I feel like that's important owning a business. You know, a lot of guys start a tattoo shop and they're like, oh, I'm going to take 50% from everybody. And they got a problem giving people raises. You know, you got to request time off and all this. For me, like, I got into tattooing to become an independent soul, you know? So for me, that's the best part about tattooing. If I want to take 3 months off right now and go to Europe with my wife, I can do it because I work for myself, you know? And all of our tattooers, I want them to do the same thing. So if they're like, hey, I want to go to this festival, or I want to go snowboarding, or me and my dad want to go hiking, I want you to do it, because when you come through those doors, I want you to have your head screwed on straight. And I want these clients to leave with killer tattoos and a good attitude. You know, that's important. And then that's how your business is going to last.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Let's give some of the artists at Olde Line a shout out. Who you got working there right now?
So we've got AB, Anarth Bautista, who is my apprentice, who is actually like become a better tattooer than me, which is amazing. And I'm super proud of him. We've got Hellbound Hawk, who's a great traditional tattooer. Kike. We've got Adam Cashman. We've got Christina, the piercer. We've got Mike, our piercer. We've got Kim that works up front. A couple other people. Randy works up front. And then, God, who am I missing? We've got my friend Trey, who's a rad tattooer that moved from Texas to come tattoo with us. And then we have a multitude of guest artists coming through there all the time, which is really good for the town we live in, because there's not a lot of tattoo shops there that are doing what we're doing. And we have people come from all over the world to tattoo with us, you know. Kike Torres came, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years ago from Bogota, Colombia. And he brings a lot of his friends in from Colombia that are like unbelievably amazing tattooers. It blows my mind, you know, and they're in a situation where, you know, in Colombia, they don't have the opportunity to make a lot of money tattooing. So for them to come to the United States, it's a game changer for them, you know? So that feels good to be able to be a part of something like that, you know? And it's because the biggest shout out goes to my wife, Kim, and her crew up front. Like, I think that a lot of people that tattoo in this industry, they don't realize how hard the front crew works. You know, you got to think, if you've got 8 or 9 tattoo artists at your tattoo shop and you're doing the booking for every single one of those artists, you're back multiple times just for one tattoo. So you stack 8 or 9 artists on that and they're booked for 6 months. Your life, you're living on your computer just answering emails. So then at that point, you got to figure out how to hire people from the outside that are familiar with tattooing to answer emails and stuff like that. So it's hard for me to watch the amount of work that my wife puts into it as opposed to the amount that I put into it, because I feel like my job's maybe a little easier because of my tattooing. I'm the tattooer and the janitor at the tattoo shop. Like, the reason the tattoo shop looks the way it does is because of me, because I was raised by an interior decorator. So I really focus on keeping that place clean, talking to the clients when they come through the door, because a majority of them are fans of the show. But to be honest, our success is because of all of our local clientele, man. These people in Maryland and all the surrounding areas have just been so good to us. They love Olde Line, and it's cool. Yeah. And I think because of what me and my wife and our whole crew gives them on a daily basis, we don't shortchange anybody. Has there been a mistake or two over the years? Yes, but that's with anything. We're making permanent decision for a living. So if you come in and you want to get Roman numerals tattooed on you, one might be done wrong every once in a while because we are not really familiar with that, or there might be a wrong spelling at some point. But on that topic, I feel like it's the person who's getting the tattoos responsibility to double and triple check, man. It's going on you forever, man. You better make sure that your Uncle Benny's name is spelled right.
So whose fault is the misspelling? Is it the customers?
I'll take it with them, but it is,
Yeah, I think so. And big shout out to Kim. I think that a lot of people don't necessarily understand how important the back end is in any business in general, just to keep things organized and keep everything moving and allow the front end to kind of do what it does. And it's definitely the less glamorous side of the business, but so important, so important to keep things moving the right way.
Absolutely. We've been in business now almost 11 years, and the tattoo shop has grown so much. Me and my wife were recently going through pictures of what it looked like when we first designed it and moved in. And it was, we were in a mall, so we were under the impression that we had to have all these clothes. So we had contacted all these tattooers and we're like, hey, make me a shirt. We'll put it in the mall. We'll sell it for you. And then there was a handful of like clothing companies that were kind of geared towards tattooing at the time. And it was crickets in there, dude. Nobody bought clothes. Because right next door in that town, there was all these clothing stores. So we're like, all right, well, that didn't work. So we'll expand it and bring more tattooers in. People just want tattoos, man. They don't want to buy shirts,
Yeah, but it's trial and error. You got a space. Why not use it to try to do a bunch of cool shit? I mean, obviously tattoos is the bread and butter. It's the main gig. But if you have a creative space, do a bunch of creative shit, see what happens, then you never know what people are going to be into coming into a shop, so I think that's cool, man. But yeah, it's of course in the mall, they're probably just like, A
lot of people walk by the shop and they're a little skeptical. And then maybe a week or two later, they'll see somebody out in the general public. It's like, man, who did that sleeve on you? And they'll be like, oh, Adam Cashman did it from Olde Line Tattoo. And they're like, what? That's in the mall, So, and there's a handful of good tattoo shops in the town that we're in, but I feel for the most part, me and the people who have worked under the Olde Line roof over the years, people that are there now and people that have been there in the past, have helped build the name of this studio and made it the powerhouse that it is, And there's a lot of that have come and gone on good terms, and there's a handful that have left on bad terms. And there's a couple people that have just left on their own. And I'm glad that they left, because then I didn't have to fire them,
Yeah, absolutely. I imagine the tattoo shop is kind of like, it's almost like it should have saloon doors at some point. Cause I imagine that there's just a lot of people that come and go, like you're saying, positive ways, some negative ways. Some they just disappear.
It's wild to me. It's definitely like the one business where a constant rotating door, I feel like the crew that we have at Olde Line now is the best that the shop has ever been. Everybody gets along. We all hang out outside of work. There's no tattitudes left in there at all. And we're at this point very, very selective who we bring in the door. So what we do is we'll bring you in for a handful of guest spots, kind of get the vibe off of you. and then let you know before you commit, hey, there is a chance that this won't work out. So if you want to move here and commit to it, that's on you. Me and my wife expect very little from people. And one of the main things is be kind to your client, no dick pics, respect everybody that walks through the door, and do a clean, nice tattoo, and be clean and sterile. And that's it. And show up to work on time, you know? And it's amazing to me how many people, you know, they neglect that, and they're like, oh, I'm a tattooer, I can just be an hour late. It's like, no, dude, your client is sitting on the couch. And that didn't just affect our business, it affected you, and it affected the other 4 tattooers that are in here, because now that person has a bad taste in its mouth. So to be honest with you, owning a tattoo shop, there's a little portion of it that's like babysitting, you know? And for any business, I would think the same for a hair salon or a Harley Davidson shop or whatever, you know? It's, you're catering to so many people as an owner, and a lot of times it's very, very stressful thing, you know? So I'm glad that I have my wife to help me out with that. There's no way I could do it on my own. No way.
Obviously, you're known for your incredible traditional tattoos, and this is the Sailor Jerry podcast. So I was just wondering if you can just say a few words about what the legacy of Sailor Jerry Norman Collins means to you.
You know, to me, it means built to last, man. It's, you look at those images and they're timeless. They're never, ever going to go out of style. You know, 100 years from now, they're still going to be super cool looking. I think that he was one of the pioneers of figuring out the way tattooing should be done, you know, because like I said, going back to the other styles of tattooing, they're great, they're beautiful, and they're impressive. But for longevity purposes, traditional is the way, man, you know? And Sailor Jerry has left that legacy. You know, there's not a tattoo shop that I've been in my 26 years of doing this that didn't have some type of Sailor Jerry flash in there, or the books or whatever. And you can look through all the modern books you want, but you look back at Sailor Jerry's books and they're still so cool to this day. So I think it's awesome. I'm super stoked to be doing this podcast with you. It means the world to me, man, that you guys would have me on this. And I think it's really cool. And I'm glad that his name is still being tossed around, you know?
Yeah, man, I think it's great too, you know, and we're honored to have you. So we appreciate it. What's up? I hear you're into the cactuses. Is that true?
I sometimes work part-time at American Tattoo in Vista, California here. And Sam Phillips, the owner, and Ben Grillo, who tattoo there,
yeah,
it got me into it. You know, they were really into it. And I think I went and I helped Ben Grillo at his house one day, put a huge cactus in his yard, which was terrifying because the needle, the spines on those things were like 6 inches long, you know? And he gave me a cactus when I left, and then I went and bought one. And then a couple weeks later, I had a ski mask on and I was cutting people's cactuses out of their yards and all kinds of stuff. And now I have a collection of over 200 potted cactuses in my yard, and it's become an obsession. And I love it, dude. To me, it's kind of like that Zen time, you know? You go outside in the morning, you get your little chopsticks, you pluck all the little extra things off of it and manicure them, and it's quiet out there. It's really peaceful.
Seems like it escalated kind of quickly.
It totally did. But also, like, everything in my life escalates quickly. Years ago, I got into antiques, and it wasn't 6 months into it, my whole house is filled with antiques. Like, I do everything to the extreme, which is probably how I got to where I am in tattooing, because I got my first tattoo and then I'm like, yep, I'm going to cover my whole body. I did a decent tattoo. Now I got to be really good at it, you know? So I try to do the best I can with whatever I'm involved in, you know? And that includes being a father, a husband, a business owner, a cactus groomer, a tattooer, you know?
That's awesome, man. And shout out to Ben Grillo. I got him coming on the podcast in a little bit here. I'm stoked to talk to him.
There's nothing that I appreciate more than tattooers that are well known that don't have tattooeds, because that ruins it for people, you know? I think that it goes back to the PMA thing, man. Keep it positive and good things will happen to you. I've always said that if you treat tattooing well, she'll treat you even better.
Yeah, true that, man. All right, a couple just last random questions for you. What do you think you'd be doing if you had never started tattooing?
You know, today I would probably start like a landscaping business or something like that, because I'm really into that. But prior to tattooing, I worked for a grocery chain called Albertsons, which I was a part of the union, and it was a pretty good paying job. So I'd probably be working in some grocery store somewhere or something like that.
Nice. Yeah, my mom worked for Stater Brothers for years. I know all about that gig.
finding tattooing has been the best thing that's ever happened to me, because it's let me live my life the way that I want to live. And I believe that if I would have stayed the course with the grocery thing, you're working on somebody else's time. You're punching the clock, and it's not for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you love about tattooing?
What I love about tattooing is the interaction that you have with all different walks of life. It's every day somebody in your chair is different than the last person. And to me, that's the coolest thing. On top of the fact that you're giving somebody something that they can keep forever. Nobody can take your tattoo away from you. And if you're hanging out with somebody that can take your tattoo away from you, then you're hanging out with the wrong crowd, because you're in the danger zone at that point. But for me, it's the satisfaction I get of making somebody feel better about themselves. The lady that has a scar, a C-section scar, or had a tummy tuck, or they had to get their arm cut open and had stitches. And they live with these scars that make them feel self-conscious. To cover those up with beautiful flowers and make them feel good about themselves is the best feeling for me.
Awesome, man. What do you hate about tattooing?
What do I hate about tattooing? I don't hate anything about tattooing. I can sit here and bitch and complain about like how futuristic it's getting, but I like it. I dig it. I think it's a cool show to watch. I'm not going to tattoo with a Darth Vader saber sword, but I get it. You know what I mean? It's lighter, it's easier, it's more efficient. That's cool. But I like to hear it, man. I like to use the coil machines, and I just love the old school mentality of tattooing. I'm not going to sit there and make my needles anymore, but
are you a lover or fighter?
Am I a lover or a fighter? I'm a lover, but I can fucking fight pretty good if you put me in the wrong position. And that doesn't mean like fight. That means like mentally, you know what I mean? Like over the years, that's been one of those things. That's why I've spent some time in therapy, is because I've been known to like say some shit on a whim that 20 minutes later, I've got to apologize to that person because I really hurt their feelings, And for that, that's something that I'm learning as time goes on to be a better person,
Yeah, I feel you, man. It's the human experience is a work in progress for sure. What about solo Ozzy or Black Sabbath? What's better?
Black Sabbath.
Ooh, nice.
Is Crazy Train Ozzy song or Black Sabbath?
No, Crazy Train solo Ozzy. That's Blizzard
of
Oz.
Solo Ozzy is then. I love that song. I also am a big Kiss fan. I love Kiss. So I remember 20 years ago going to their farewell tour. And then every year they had a farewell tour. And I was like, man, I got to go to all of them, because when is it really going to be the farewell tour,
All right. So we're in the digital age. Would you rather have friends or followers?
Friends, for sure. To me, Instagram is the way I survive. It's the modern day Yellow Pages. I feel like I have to put tattoos on there to generate business for me and my studio, but I'd much rather have a handful of friends and be able to survive, for sure. Social media, a lot of the younger generations, I see them struggling and comparing themselves to other people on there, but it's all bullshit, man. It's a fake fucking world. You can portray any life you want to on social media, and people are going to buy into it. But the reality is, no matter how rich and famous you are, you're struggling just as much as the next man or woman. And that's a fact.
Absolutely, man. All right. Last question here. What is the meaning of life according to Dave Kruseman?
The meaning of life to me is be kind to your fellow human, no matter where they come from or what their background is, because you never know what kind of struggle that person's gone through. Be kind and rewind, right?
Amen, Dave. Man, thank you so much for your time, my brother. It's been so cool talking with you, man. You're an awesome dude, and I've really, really enjoyed this. So thank you for the time.
Absolutely. Let me know if you ever want to do it again. I'll do it anytime, man. I had a blast, and I look forward to watching Ben Grillo's.
Hell yeah. I'll tell him you said what's up. All right, Dave. Peace.
Yeah, peace, man. Have a good one.
Oh, yeah. That's a wrap on episode 40 of the Sailor Jerry podcast, ladies and gentlemen. As always, huge amounts of gratitude and respect to our guest, the one and only Dave Kruseman. Dave, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate your energy, my man. You can follow Dave Kruseman on Instagram, at Dave Kruseman, at Olde Line Tattoo. Of course, you can follow me at 213 Mattman. We got at Sailor Jerry. Why don't you go ahead and give the Bronx a follow too, at Bronx Vision. We are playing tonight in Minneapolis. We play in just an hour or two, so I'm very excited to get back on stage at the Fillmore tonight in Minneapolis. Thank you very much, everybody out there, for following and supporting the podcast. If you're not subscribed to it, please subscribe. If you feel like leaving a comment on YouTube or a review, of course, that really helps. So thank you guys very much. Don't forget that Sailor Jerry Spiced Rum is still made the old school way, 92 proof, bold and smooth as hell. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Peace.